Welcome to the NCCAP Power Point on Federal Ftag 679. This PowerPoint was created by Dawn Worsley, the NCCAP Board President. I would encourage you to have access to the Google Drive link that was sent to you with your course. The Google Drive is titled Federal Requirements MEPAP I and contains all the documents we will be referring to in this PowerPoint. Please access the document in your Google Drive titled Ftag 679 Activities. We're going to be referring to this as we go through this PowerPoint. The Ftag 679 regulation states the facility must provide, based on a comprehensive assessment and care plan and the preferences of each resident, an ongoing program to support residents in their choice of activities, both facility-sponsored group and individual activities and independent activities designed to meet the interest of and support of the physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being of each resident, encouraging both independent and interaction in the community. Please take note in the change of language. Red indicates a new language in the new regulations, and black indicates the old or the current language. The old Ftag 248 read, the facility must provide for an ongoing program of activities designed to meet, in accordance with the comprehensive assessment, the interests and the physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being of each resident. You can see that the new regulation is much more directive and expanded in what they mean by ongoing activities. Some action steps for you to consider would be to look at the assessment you use now. Does it ask just basic interests, such as do you like music, do you like arts and crafts, or does the assessment allow for a very individualized response? You may not be in a position to change your assessment form, but you can certainly add more specifics in your progress notes or your care plans. The definition of the comprehensive assessment, which they're defining in this regulation, basically is a combination of the activity interest assessment as well as the complete MDS. You are encouraged to become more familiar with the entire MDS beyond the Section F that activity professionals often fill out. The assessment has many areas that you as an activity director, professional, should review before the development of a care plan. If you go to the second paragraph of the Ftag 679 regulations that we're reviewing, you'll find a paragraph that focuses on the intent of this regulation, and it states, to ensure that the facilities implement an ongoing resident-centered activities program that incorporates the residents' interests, hobbies, and cultural preferences, which is integral to the maintaining and/or improving a resident's physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being and independence, to create opportunities for each resident to have a meaningful life by supporting his or her domains of wellness, which include security, autonomy, growth, connectedness, identity, joy, and meaning. You'll notice again the words in red. Those are added words to the definition, and you can see there's an emphasis on individualization and resident-centered. Let's look at that term, ongoing resident-centered activities program. What we have been seeing is, technically this means 24 hours a day, or as preferred or needed by the residents. This wording supports the position that activities is everyone's responsibility, not just activity staff. The wording will help you address the importance of facility staff engaging in activity-directed interventions as designated and care planned by the activity director or the activity professional. This is really a very exciting time for our profession because the regulations are backing up what we've been saying all along, that activities is a part of life and everybody in the community needs to support that position. Let's look at some of these definitions. If you move down on your paper, you can kind of see that they're all listed there. Activities, again, this is not a new definition, but basically activities is a broad term that refers to any endeavor other than routine ADLs in which a resident participates. Some of the criteria for activities is that it is intended to enhance his or her sense of well-being and to promote or enhance physical or cognitive and emotional health. These include, but are not limited to, activities that promote self-esteem, pleasure, comfort, education, creativity, success, and independence. You might want to note that ADL activities such as manicures, pedicures, hairstyling, and makeovers may be considered part of the activity program because there's some social domains to that, as well as promoting self-esteem. If you move to the bottom of the first page that we're looking at, you'll notice guidance to surveyors. This provides some insight to the surveyors on what they should be looking for as they look at an ongoing activity program. Research findings and the observation of positive resident outcomes confirm that activities are an integral component of residents' lives. Residents have indicated that daily life and involvement should be meaningful. Activities are meaningful when they reflect a person's interests and lifestyle, are enjoyable to the person, help the person to feel useful, and provide a sense of belonging. Maintaining contact and interaction with the community is an important aspect of a person's well-being and facilitates feelings of connectedness and self-esteem. Involvement in community includes interactions such as assisting the resident to maintain his or her ability to independently shop, attend the community theater, local concerts, library, and participate in facility groups. On the second page of this document, you'll notice a title that says Activity Approaches for Residents with Dementia. The next several pages are specific examples of things the surveyors should be looking for when they encounter residents with these particular conditions that we're going to talk about. So this first section basically guides the surveyor in identifying areas of either a good activity program that's being effective or an activity program that is deficient. All residents have a need for engagement in meaningful activities. For residents with dementia, the lack of engaging activities can cause boredom, loneliness, and frustration, resulting in distress and agitation. Activities must be individualized and customized based on the resident's previous lifestyle, occupation, family, and hobbies, preferences, and comfort. They indicate a website where you can find some additional guidelines to help develop this program. This goes beyond structured groups. We must move away from the one activity that is scheduled throughout the facility. We're talking about multi-leveled programming, or at a very minimum parallel programming to meet the individual needs of the folks that we serve in our care communities. Before the document gets into some specific suggestions as to how to meet the needs of residents who have various behavioral expressions, it says the following. The facility may have identified a resident's pattern of behavioral symptoms and may offer activity interventions whenever possible, prior to the behavior occurring. Once a behavior escalates, activities may be less effective or may even cause further stress to the resident. Some behaviors may be appropriate reactions to feelings of discomfort, pain, or embarrassment, such as aggressive behaviors exhibited by some residents with dementia during bathing. In these cases, activities is not the solution. Activities departments may get involved in the behavioral monitoring log. We, as a department, can play a very important role in identifying some of the behaviors that residents may be exhibiting and what they mean. All behavior has a reason, and all behavior is trying to tell us something, and activities needs to be part of that. The document goes on to explain a variety of activities-related interventions that a facility may provide to try to minimize distress behavior. They're included but not limited to the following suggestions. And these following suggestions for the specific types of behaviors that might be seen in our care communities are things that can be incorporated into our program and also incorporated into the care plan, and also the interdisciplinary team should be participating in providing some of these interventions. The resident who exhibits unusual amounts of energy or walking without purpose. The one thing that needs to be in place is having enough space and appropriate environmental cues for individuals who have memory loss. They need to have the opportunity for physical exercise and not feel like they're being trapped or contained into a small space. These open, safe environments decrease exit-seeking behavior and sometimes minimizes behaviors of agitation. There needs to be ample seating areas, spaced appropriately, It would be advantageous to have a walking path either indoors or outdoors in a garden area, a setting where the person can freely manipulate objects. Many care communities recreate home-like nuances such as baby areas, kitchen areas, working areas to give the people an opportunity to engage in some things that they used to do in the past. Or on the other hand, there might be a room on the neighborhood, the memory care neighborhood, that is calming, soothing music and dimmed lights and rocking chairs, and an opportunity to decompress when feeling a little agitated. More suggestions for the resident who exhibits unusual amounts of energy or walking without purpose is providing aromatherapy, or if not aromatherapy, just having pleasant smells to attract people. Sometimes the smell of coffee and muffins baking attracts a person and they'll be willing to sit down and relax. Communication skills, such as validating the resident's feelings and words. All staff who work with memory care areas need to have training on appropriate ways to interact with our folks. Very often, staff can sometimes provoke the behavior by the way they approach the person, and appropriate training minimizes some of this. Staff need to readily engage the person in conversation about what they may be looking for or what is causing them distress, and using various one-to-one activities to provide feelings of satisfaction or possibly to distract the individual. Having access to familiar pictures and photo albums and taking the time to sit down with the person and reminisce a bit sometimes distracts the person from trying to leave the community. Another category of resident is the individual engages in behavior that is not conducive with therapeutic home-like environment. Again, creating a calm, non-rushed environment with structured familiar activities is key to memory care. There needs to be a sense of familiarity and comfort for these folks. Some of these activities that might work to distract or engage the individual are life skill programs such as folding clothes and sorting familiar objects and matching, putting things together or taking things apart. Having staff provide one-on-one cueing and encouragement and praise and reminiscing, that certainly contributes to a person remaining comfortable in the care community. Individualized approaches such as knowing what kind of music they like and making sure their favorite TV station is on or their favorite objects are within reach is key to keeping the person engaged. And also just taking a walk with the person. You see someone just needs someone to walk with, all staff can just take a walk down the hall, do a little quick reminiscing, provide some comfort, and hopefully engage the person a little bit. More suggestions for this type of person is involving the family members, making sure that snacks are accessible, having photo albums again available. There's nothing more distracting than sitting down and talking about some of the photos and memories of the past. Engaging in exercise and movement activities, using up some of that energy that may be built up from sitting in a care community. Exchanging self-stimulatory activity for more socially appropriate activity that uses their hands in a public place. Life skill programming where their energy is directed to familiar tasks is very effective. For the resident who exhibits behavior that require a less stimulating environment, to discontinue behaviors not welcomed by others sharing their social space. This might be possibly the resident who gets over agitated or anxious and creates distress to those around them. Suggestions include offering activities in which the resident can succeed that are broken into simple steps that involve small groups or one-to-one activities such as using the computer that are short and repetitive and they are stopped if the resident becomes overwhelmed. Reducing excessive noise such as a television. All staff should be very aware of the environment on our memory care areas. Having the TV and the music playing at the same time is a big no-no. Having the TV playing constantly causes an extraneous distraction in the background. All staff should be aware of the environmental stress that's being caused by the noise of staff talking loudly over TV and music and all sorts of things. It creates a lot of stress. So that's something that needs to be reviewed. Involving in familiar occupation-related activities. A resident, if they desire, can do paid or volunteer work, and the type of work will be included in the resident's plan of care. Life skill activities are very popular in memory care. Knowing the resident's history and what they like to do and introducing familiar items from their past often engages the individual in a positive way. Continuing for the resident who exhibits behavior that requires less stimulation include working outside the facility, sorting supplies, delivering resident mail, passing juice and snacks. You have to refer to the resident right to work regulation, but this is not out of the realm of possibility for some of our higher functioning folks who are feeling upset and unsettled due to a lack of purpose. Giving them a purpose, a meaningful sense of purpose, is effective if it's done properly according to the plan of care and everybody is on board with it. Involving in physical activities such as walking, exercise, or dancing, games or projects requiring strategy, planning and concentration such as model building, and creative programs such as music, art, dance, or physically resistive activities such as kneading clay, hammering, scrubbing, sanding, using a punching bag, using stretch bands, or lifting weights. This sounds like a full gamut of some of the things that we do in the activity program, but what makes it therapeutic is that we assess these folks and identify what they might need, and we introduce the approach according to the need and appropriately and according to the care plan. Some other suggestions for residents who go through others' belongings. Slow exercises are suggested. Not everything has to be loud music and throwing a balloon around. It can be some just tapping and rhythmic music, movement to music. Therapeutic drumming is very popular. Having access to rocking chairs where people can rock is known to be effective in calming folks down. Using normalizing life activities such as stacking canned food into shelves, folding laundry. Offering sorting activities such as sorting socks, ties, or buttons, involving in organizing tasks, putting activity supplies away, providing rummage areas in plain sight such as a dresser or a baby area or a garden area or a desk area. These are very commonplace things on memory care, is to engage the person in things they've done in the past. The loss of sense of purpose is probably one of the more devastating losses our older adults feel, and giving them an opportunity to re-engage in things that brought them satisfaction gives them a sense of wholeness again, which is important. Using non-entry cues such as do not disturb signs or removable sashes at the doors of other residents' rooms sometimes helps, sometimes not. Providing residents with locks to secure their belongings if requested and they're able to manage the key and the locked area. I think sometimes our approach is just as effective. If you see someone in a room they don't belong, you don't accuse them of what are you doing in there. You simply say, hey, I was looking for you. I need your help with something. And very often that entices the person out of the room, and all staff need to be involved with that kind of distraction and that kind of diversion, not just activities. For the resident who is withdrawn from previous activity interests, customary routines, and isolates themselves in the room and the bed most of the day, sometimes we need to provide activities for when they're available, and sometimes they're just out right before a meal or right after a meal, and we provide the activity there and engage them in some way. Providing an in-room program is crucial for these kinds of folks, involving volunteers in the in-room programming. Providing ongoing things such as available music and in-room videos is effective. Encouraging volunteer-type work that begins in the room and needs to be completed outside the room, or a small group activity in the resident's room, if the resident agrees, working on failure-free activities such as simple structured crafts or other activities with a friend, having the resident assist another person. So in our one-to-one program, there is the opportunity to possibly bring another resident who doesn't like groups in with this one-to-one person and develop a friendship, and possibly that would work. Of course, this has to be done with the permission of both residents. More suggestions for residents who have withdrawn from previous activity interests and isolate themselves. Invite them to special events, but possibly involve a family or friend to help invite them to the program, or have their roommate encourage them to attend the program. But possibly if they attended with another person, they would feel more apt to attend. Engaging in activities that give the resident a sense of value, such as intergenerational activities that emphasize, the resident sharing their oral history and their knowledge of the past. Inviting the resident to participate on facility committees. Maybe their sense of purpose would feel utilized if we were asking them for help on certain things. Inviting the resident outdoors. If you have nice outdoor areas and patios on a beautiful day, that's a perfect one-to-one activity, is going outside and enjoying the weather. Involving in gross motor activities such as simple exercises. This can be done on a one-to-one basis in room as well, and sometimes the movement increases their energy and uplifts their mood, and possibly they might be interested in coming out of the room after something like that. Residents with attention-seeking behaviors are discussed. For the resident who excessively seeks attention from staff and/or peers, it is suggested to include them in social programs, possibly smaller group activities, service projects where they have a purpose, and provide them with opportunities for leadership. Someone who is seeking attention for a particular reason, and this needs to be identified by the activity professional and the care team, and think of ways that their needs for attention will be met in a positive way as opposed to a negative way. For the resident who lacks awareness of personal safety, such as putting foreign objects in his or her mouth, or who is self-destructive and tries to harm themselves by cutting or hitting themselves, headbanging, or causing other injuries to self, here are some suggestions. Definitely observe closely during activities, and you definitely need to take precautions with some of the items that are within reach of this person. If doing any kind of craft project, any kind of sharp object, or any small item that could be put into their mouth has to be closely monitored and kept from this individual. Possibly involving them in smaller group activities where they'll have more one-on-one attention, and be sure that they won't do anything harmful to themselves. If giving them objects, give them objects that are not harmful, such as holding towels, things that are soft, things that can't fit into their mouth, things that cannot cut them. And then that way they can be engaged without causing themselves harm. More suggestions for people who have poor safety awareness would be to focus attention on activities that are emotionally soothing, such as more quiet type programs, listening to music, one-to-one interaction, focusing on things of interest to them and things that they like to do, and then possibly engaging them in those activities. Possibly refocusing their attention on physical activities to exert some of that energy they might have, such as exercise or throwing activities where they throw a soft object at a target and getting rid of some of that energy that might be within them. There's some suggestions for the resident who has delusional and hallucinatory behavior that is stressful to him or her. Suggestions include focusing the resident on activities that decrease stress and increase awareness of actual surroundings, such as familiar activities and physical activities. Offer verbal reassurance, especially in terms of keeping the resident safe, and acknowledge that the resident's experience is real to him or her. Staff approach for this kind of person is very important. One should never minimize what they're seeing or feeling. One should provide some validation and empathy for the emotions that are being expressed, and reassurance that everything is okay. There are additional activity interventions suggested throughout the regulations. You can refer to the document that's titled Activity-Related Ftags in your Google Drive, and it's several pages identifying all of the regulations where activities may be mentioned and how we interface within those regulations. So that would be an important document for you to review and look at. So what does all of this mean? Some residents may be independently capable of pursuing their own activities without interventions from the facility. This information should be noted in the assessment and identified in the plan of care. The outcome for the resident, the decrease or elimination of any behaviors, either validates the activity intervention or suggests the need for a new approach. The facility may use, but need not duplicate, information from other sources, such as the RAI MDS assessment, including the cause, assessment by other disciplines, observation, and resident family interviews. Other sources of relevant information include the resident's lifelong interests, spirituality, life roles, goals, strengths, needs, and activity pursuit patterns and preferences. This assessment should be completed by or under the supervision of a qualified professional. Surveyors need to be aware that some facilities may have a non-traditional approach to activities. In nursing homes where culture change philosophy has been adopted, all staff may be trained as nurses' aides or universal workers, which are workers with a primary role but multiple duties outside of their primary role, and may be responsible to provide activities which may resemble those of a private home. The provision of activities should not be confined to a department, but rather may involve all staff interacting with residents. Residents, staff, and families should interact in ways that reflect daily life instead of informal activities programs. Residents may be more involved in the ongoing activities in their living area, such as care-planned approaches including chores, preparing foods, meeting with other residents to choose spontaneous activities, and leading an activity themselves. It has been reported that some culture-changed homes might not have a traditional activities calendar and instead focus on community life to include activities. Instead of an activities director, some homes have a community life coordinator, a community developer, or other title for the individual directing the activities program. When the surveyors visit your community, they are conducting a survey and they're investigating the care and services provided. They use a variety of documents called critical pathways. You have a folder in your Google Drive called Critical Pathways with all of the critical pathways that the surveyors are using when they come to your community. In our case with activities, they're using the Activities Critical Element Pathway and the guidance to investigate concerns related to activities, which are based on the resident's comprehensive assessment and care plan, and meet the resident's interests and preferences, and support his or her physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being. When you look in the critical pathway folder, you'll find that there's lots of critical pathways to review. But these particular ones are ones that would be most relevant to us in activities, and it would be advantageous for you to print them out and review your departmental services and ensure that you're meeting the standards as defined in these pathways, because this is what the surveyors will look at, so why can't we look at them and make sure that we're meeting the standards as written? The pathways that are relevant to us most are activities, of course, resident counsel, sufficient and competent staff, behavioral emotional, communication sensory, hospice end of life, pain management, and dementia care. If you look at the individual documents for each critical pathway, they follow a consistent format. Some of the things that you're going to see: one is the initial review items. What are they looking for within that particular critical pathway? The second area is observations. What are they looking for as they walk through your community? Then there's a section on resident or resident representative and the family interview. What questions might they ask the resident or their family about this particular critical pathway exploration? Then there's staff interviews. Some of the critical pathways have very specific questions for specific staff. What do they ask the nurse? What do they ask the activity professional? Then there's the record review. What do they look for within the chart? After they gather all that information, there's a section to help them make a critical element decision. Is there a need to investigate further, or can they move on and this standard has been met? If a deficiency is being noted, then the final element within the critical pathway is related care areas, because this particular substandard area of care might be related to another area of care, and then there would be an additional deficiency issued in that particular area as well. So these critical pathways are all in your folder. I would encourage you to read them and also do a self-study of yourself. Are you meeting them? And if there are areas of concern, you want to work on them before you have state survey. I know this PowerPoint covered a lot of information. You have all the tools you need within your Google Drive. If you have any questions, you know where you can reach me. And some of these documents can also be found on the NCCAP website if you lose access to your Google Drive. So go to the NCCAP website under resources and you can find all this information there as well. If you are not a friend of NCCAP on Facebook, I would encourage you to do so. If you have not created your student profile on NCCAP, I would also encourage you to do that as well. Thank you.